going to be another book review, and today the book we are reviewing is The Woman at Hitler's Table. This is written by Rosella Postorino. I picked this up in Tesco and I decided to pick it up this month. I read this super quickly. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And yeah, let me read you the back of the book and then I'll explain a bit more about it and my thoughts. So it says, East Prussia, 1943. Hitler hides away in the Wolfhangs? Not quite sure how you pronounce it. My German's not great, but basically he's in his hidden headquarters. The tide is turning in the war and his enemies circle ever closer. 10 women are chosen. 10 women to taste his food and protect him from poison. 26-year-old Rosa has lost everything to this war. Alone and scared, she faces the SS with nothing but the knowledge every bite might be her last. Caught on the wrong side of history, how far is Rosa willing to go to survive? So this book is about a woman called Rosa, and she's living with her in-laws and her husband in East Prussia, which... where was Prussia at the time? I'm not quite sure. I'll put a little annotation what East Prussia was, because obviously they renamed, changed the borders and things like that. But yes, she's living with her in-laws and her husband. Her husband is sent off onto the front line, and she is enlisted by Hitler's staff to become one of his 10 food tasters. Now this is something that actually did happen. Hitler had, I think it was 15 food testers, I think it says at the back of the book, and this is based off one of those women's stories. So the woman that this is based off is a woman called Margot Volk, or Frau Volk. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce it, and at the age of 96 she decided to make it public that she was one of Hitler's tasters. So for all of her life, the rest of her family never knew that she was a taster. So it's based off that. The author really wanted to meet her, but sadly she had passed away before she had the chance. So this book is sort of imagining what it could have been like for her, being, you know, one of the people that sits down every day and basically eats the same food that Hitler is about to, and see if it's been poisoned or not. So yes, 10 ladies are selected in this book, one being Rosa, and they have to go and taste his 3 meals a day. I believe they're all given something slightly different to be able to pinpoint if something was poisoned, what it was. They have to sit at this table for an hour and wait to see if any of them become ill before they are allowed to go home. So this book is really interesting because Rosa herself, I don't think she's necessarily a supporter of Hitler. Her dad definitely wasn't before he died, and Rosa seems like she doesn't really have much family. She has a brother, but she's not really in contact with him. And so her family becomes, you know, her in-laws living at their place, and also this group of women at the table every day. So in a way, Rosa sort of becomes a prisoner and an ally. You know, she's a prisoner. She's being forced to be there. I mean, she is getting paid for it, but, you know, this is sort of like her conscription. This is her part in the war. So, in a way, she is forced into doing it. They have to eat these meals. They have to go every day. But on another side, you know, she's being an ally. She's helping Hitler, and she's, you know, in the same room as these SS. And throughout the book, it shows her development with not only the girls, but also her relationship with the SS. She does befriend one of the men. I'll leave it at that. So the bell, the postman just came, so I forgot whereabouts we left off. But yeah, so we're sort of with Rosa, but we're conflicted, because on one side she seems like an ally, but at the same time, this isn't the life she chose. She didn't, you know, sign up for it willingly. This is sort of her way of providing and helping out for her and her in-laws, because she is getting paid. She's getting paid, you know, quite a good amount as well. This book I found really easy to read. Like from the start, I was really invested in the character. I found it was written really well, really smoothly, and I just found it a very easy read and I really enjoyed it. There were a couple of things that I was a bit conflicted about, and that's why it wasn't a 5-star book for me, but I would recommend this, and I would, you know, I'd read it again in the future because it had such beautiful fluidity and it was so beautifully written that some of it was almost like poetry in a way, and I'm not one for poetry, but that was sort of how it seemed. It was very sort of wistful, whatever that means, and just beautifully written. I don't know what else to say about that. But yeah, one thing I didn't really like, you know, Rosa finds out, or they fairly early on in the book, she gets a letter saying that her husband's gone missing. And you know, this happened to a lot of families and women during the war. The other halves were pronounced as missing and most of the time presumed dead. And her mother-in-law, you know, never gave up hope. She's always said, you know, he's gonna come back. We need to like prepare for when he comes back and just keep things going as they are. But Rosa, in a way, she sort of gave up hope pretty quickly that he was ever gonna come back. And in a way, she sort of moved on. And that was a bit that I couldn't relate to, because I think if it was me, I would be clinging on for that little bit of hope that he would be able to come back. And later on, you know, we find out she does go into a relationship with someone else in the book. And for me, that was hard to read because, yes, I think there was an element of survival in there. But I think she did choose to lead that path and have that relationship and carry it on. You know, she wasn't necessarily forced into it. I definitely think she went on her own account for this relationship. And for me, that was hard to read because I think if it was me, I would just still be holding on the hope for as long as possible that my husband would come back, and she basically ends up cheating on him. So that bit was a bit iffy for me. The other thing I didn't really think added much value to the book was her relationship with the Baroness. Obviously her father-in-law worked as the gardener for the Baroness, but the Baroness sort of takes her in and they form this odd friendship, and I don't really understand what purpose it gave other than introducing, well, he wasn't even introduced, but this SS guy that she'd obviously seen at the dinner table was at one of these parties that the Baroness had held. And for me, I just didn't see what extra it added to it. Maybe I'm missing something, but yeah, for me, I don't think it was necessary. I think that SS man, and I'm not going to name names because I want to allude some more in the book, but I just don't think it added. I don't think it was necessary. I think he could have been introduced in a different way, that sort of thing. So that was the other thing that I was a bit unsure of, I guess. I feel like the first half of this book, or first 3 quarters, I was sort of expecting some build up, some big moment. And I don't think it had that one big, you know, explosion of a moment, that big, you know, plot twist, that big drop of a bomb. There wasn't that, but there were little things along the way that were sort of dropped. Again, I'm not going to go into it too much in case you're thinking about reading the book. But for example, the day one of the women gets poisoned, and I feel like that could have been a really big scene made further towards the end of the book, but instead it was put on, you know, maybe halfway through the book, and it was sort of just dropped, and it sort of just helped to keep the book moving. I wouldn't necessarily say it was a bad thing that there was these little revelations, and I wouldn't necessarily say that the way it's written is a bad thing in that sense. It was just not what I went into and expected. I sort of expected everything to lead up to one big event, and it was just sort of plateaued up and down quite nicely, I would say. And this book really does show not only how friendships and relationships are formed in these difficult times, but also the stress and the secrets that were happened, and secrets that you had to keep from people very near and dear to your heart. Obviously there were secrets going on in these group of girls. There are secrets between Rosa and her in-laws. There are secrets between her and her husband. And at the end of the day, it shows what needed to be done for the well-being of that person and the survival of that person. You know, they're very extreme times, and I think for any of us reading it today that weren't living through that time, it can be very difficult to imagine what it must have been like and put yourself in their shoes, because none of us hopefully will ever know what it's like to go through a war like. So it was really interesting for me to read a book from a different perspective. You know, I read a lot of books surrounded by World War II and the Holocaust, and a lot of them most of the time are accounts from people that were imprisoned in the camps, and I enjoy reading those books, but this was just sort of refreshing. It also, I mean, it wasn't directly someone's account, it was fictional, but you know, based on something that did happen, so it made me go and like research, actually, like, I wanted to know, were these people real? And you know, it does helpfully tell you on the back of the book that there were food tasters for Hitler. There probably were food tasters for Churchill as well, I imagine. And it was just interesting, sort of that breath of fresh air to read from a different perspective, almost reading from the German perspective of someone supporting Germany, even if Rosa wasn't completely on board with it, but seeing that side of things and the SS working there, the chef that worked for Hitler and that sort of thing. And yeah, I found it really nice, different, something different to read. So if you are looking for something slightly different in that category, this might be a book that you want to pick up. It's not, you know, I wouldn't say it's romance heavy. There is bits of romance in it, but I think it's more about relationships, friendships more than anything, and like most books around the Holocaust and the war, that drive for survival and doing what they need to get through. So that's what I thought of this book. Slightly waffly, I know, but only because I don't want to tell you, you know, some key events that went on. I don't want to make this a spoiler video. So if you have read it, let me know what you thought down below. If you think you're going to pick it up, let me know as well. And as always, leave me book recommendations, because I'm always on the lookout for more, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.